Can you imagine yourself coming overseas as a citizen of a foreign country, and then after getting in, integrating, putting your children in school, settling down, getting a house, doing everything, one morning, the government comes and says they made a mistake, you're not a citizen. And as at this point, you had already given up your previous citizenship. This is what happened to the Liebels family in Germany, who are originally from Togo. But you see, this story is not as easy as it sounds, simply because it dates back as 1908. And for those of you who think 1908 is like far, 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 Nigerians, we got our amalgamation in 1914. In case you don't know what amalgamation is, that was when the Northern Protectorate and the Southern Protectorate came together to form one. But in case you're wondering, how does this play into this? Back in those days, the Oyinbo people partitioned Africa. They divided Africa for their own benefits, and Germany was in charge of Togo for a period of time. Now, the forefathers of the Liebel family was a German doctor. Who was the doctor at that time? You know the way it was now. If you've watched all those movies, when they come to colonize you, they come with their infrastructure, they come with their basic amenities. So this man in question, Frederick, was their doctor. In case you don't know what colonization is, it's when another country moves to your country, takes charge of the leadership, control, infrastructure, resources, and everything. And you know what is worse? They do not live with you as equals. It's just like what is happening in South Africa, how you have the whites at the top and you have the blacks at the bottom, and they never left South Africa. So that was like the case back then for us. And so this doctor in question fell in love with a woman called Edith. Now on the screens, I will be putting their full names. Yeah, for the purpose of discussion, it is Frederick and Edith. Now, Frederick and Edith got married under the customary law in 1908. In case you don't know what customary law is, it is our traditional marriages. And you know what is crazy? Back then, there was no German registry for these people to make their marriage civil. So all they had was customary marriage. Now, in case you do not know, in Germany, up until 2026, your customary marriage is not recognized. As far as you're concerned, you are engaged. So it means that you have to do the courts, you have to do the whole Western marriage for it to be recognized as a marriage. Now, I'm just going to pause that gist and say this. You see, one of the reasons why this story is very interesting, it points out the inequality in how we are being treated and how a lot of us tend to sweep it under the rug and make it look like, oh, it doesn't matter now, Imbo, now this. We just try to. Meanwhile, you'll see how these inequalities that just seem like just ordinary laws can affect you and affect people's daily lives. And in this story, we're going to see how this translates from 1908 to 2026 that we are speaking. Now, Frederick and Edith gave birth to a son back then, which is Jean. His name was Jean. So Jean, of course, could not become a German citizen because back then, citizenship was passed through the mother, only the mother. Present times, anybody, as long as you are the man or the woman with a German passport, you can pass your citizenship to your child. It doesn't matter. But back then, it was only through mothers. So, in 2020, the descendants of Edith and Frederick's son, that's Jean, decided to go to the embassy in Togo to apply for a German passport and were given. These descendants include 3 girls, that's 3 women, and 5 children. That was how in 2020 they moved to Germany. They settled down, got into schools, integrated, everything going on fine. And then suddenly one morning, the German government wakes up to say it was an error and they took back their passports. So this is the argument. People got married in 1908. You don't recognize the traditional laws of the land. You do not respect their ways of getting married as legal. You do not have your own system in place where they could have made this marriage civil according to your own terms and conditions since you were ruling them. So that means if you look at it anyhow, it was just unjust simply because how were they supposed to make it civil? When you occupy someone's land and you're controlling the resources, you're doing everything, I mean, the best we could say is at least give them equal rights, right? But that was not the case. So anyhow you look at this situation, it was more as though Edith was just Frederick's property, like, property for, I'm trying to say, like, so there was no way her child would have become German, even though the father was actually German. So that was like, there was no way. It was not a case of an oversight, or they didn't know, or they were ignorant. No, there was no way. So meaning every route to solve this problem back then was already blocked. And over the years, the laws had changed, but still the courts, because from what I read, they had been to 1 or 2 courts which upheld the decision of the state, saying that because everything happened back then, they are still going with what happened back then. So they eventually decided that, and don't forget that this family in question are not Togolese anymore, simply because they gave up their citizenship and things like that. So right now the question is, where do they go? So far, so good. We know that because when they came into Germany, they settled in Siegen, and they were supposed to move them to Karlsruhe. And Karlsruhe is like a center where they put people, that came into the country illegally, and things like that. Because one of the claims is that they moved to Germany unauthorized. And I'm wondering, how can it be unauthorized when the passports were issued? But that's it. But as of today, the family has what they call Duldun. Duldun is when your deportation has been paused, simply because this is like a big issue right now, because it seems really unfair, but it was just a story I wanted you guys to know, simply because I am like an ardent comment reader. I always see children of especially Nigerian descendants overseas. Like, there was a comment I saw that really shook me to my core. This guy said that he's gathering money so he can come back to Nigeria to know where his grandfather was from. So you would see that a lot of us, when we japa, for example, and I'm not saying this is the case in this situation, but this is a story that can tell you how a decision you make today can affect, in my experience of living so far, I've come to understand that I think when it comes to being futuristic, I think women are more on this path than men. That's just what I've noticed, and I'm going to speak for our Nigerian men specifically, because I'm Nigerian. And so you would say that idea of, like, some people, they'll tell you, oh, when I'm dead, I don't care. And you would see how certain decisions, like I always tell people, the idea of giving up your home nationality and retaining one may be a very big mistake. You should always give your kids the chance to choose. Like when I had my son, they told me it was a decision to let go of his nationality. It wasn't mine. And back then, it didn't make sense to me. But now that I've stayed a couple of years here, I now understand that, okay, yes, maybe God sent that woman there to say that, simply because anything can come up. Just anything can come up. And look at this situation, it's so sad that I can't imagine how devastated the family is. But of course, I assume we live in a civilized society, and we live in a just society, and then we're going to see how the matter is going to turn out. But if there's any update and I feel you guys need to know, I'm going to post it on my channel again. Do not forget to subscribe, like, and share. Bye.